I know that Reverend Duffy gave a sermon on joy a few weeks back, which was back by popular demand. Several people had said, oh, we've heard parts of that sermon before and we really want to hear it again. So I watched it and I thought, well, what could I add on to those good thoughts he already gave you? So I did think about this being joy, part 2. I think most of us agree we have been through some very tough days last fall, before and after the election. And there were other hard things that had nothing to do with politics. Many of us just needed some downtime in November and December and even in January until we could kind of like regroup emotionally and with our energy. And then many of us regrouped and to start thinking about what are the next steps to preserve our democracy that seems to be shredding around us. I could see a lack of joy in our lives back then, and I certainly experienced it in my own as well. And then I discovered this little news feed. It's just a little letter that can pop in your email box every week from the group Democracy Forward. And let me tell you why it's joyful. Because they will only tell you about the lawsuits they are winning. And there's a lot of them. Some small, some larger. But when you open that little e-news feed every week, you're like, there's going to be something in there I can feel good about. So Unitarian Universalist minister Julia Hamilton refers to this time that we've gone through as being overwhelmed and underjoyed. So let's take a little inventory of where we are with our joy. And again, I think of almost everything on a continuum. Almost everything. Sometimes it's an axis, sometimes it's a continuum. And also to remember that joy and hard times are not mutually exclusive. They're actually related. But I think Reverend Duffy already told you that, so you've had a little time to think about it. Or at least that's what I took away from his sermon. So pause for a minute and just think about the last time you either saw joy in others or in yourself. And if you sat up front, you just saw it. You just saw it right here. So not when you're tuning out, or not when you're feeling kind of that contentment like after a good meal, but like real joy. For myself, I will admit, this sometimes involves watching ridiculous cat videos. I do it in secret, but they make me joyful. I also like watching the neighborhood kids at the bus stop. I live on a cul-de-sac and I'm a little up above the bus stop, so I can see most of it. So it starts with me not really knowing it's bus time, and I'm sipping my coffee and I'm failing really badly at Sudoku. And I'm feeling a little frustrated because of that. And all of a sudden I hear these shrieks of delight happening and voices from the 6 elementary kids at the bus stop. And then of course there's a little bit of dog barking going on. And I look out and they're acting out characters. They play tag, they pet the dogs. They build a lean-to fort in the side of my yard. They run, which is a whole nother story. They run sprints and they do many other things. And I find their joy pretty contagious, which is why I allow them to build the fort in my yard. Every now and then, I go out and join them. And what I notice going down there is that the parents are interacting with people who are just walking by. They're interacting with each other's dogs. And I notice that joy and safety are a neighborhood concern for all of them. It's not an individual concern. We experienced that this morning up here. The joy of our kids is a concern for all of us. I also see a couple that aren't at the bus stop, but that they walk around and they look like they're in their 70s and they are so much in love. And they brighten our entire neighborhood as they walk around in the morning chatting. And it's walking so ever in sync. And that little bend of the head toward each other. And they make all of us think about, wow, love is always possible and across our entire lifespan. And it's joyful. So a few minutes ago, I referenced Reverend Hamilton, who is a UU minister. And she tells us that there are two elements that seem to be part of the condition for joy to arise. She explains the first is presence, being in the moment, in direct relationship with the world, without trying to box it up or save it for later or evaluate its worth or review it on social media while you are still in the middle of the experience. She says joy is possible with that kind of attentive presence. And the second, she says, is you have to be willing to go with unpredictability. There's always some surprise, there's always some spontaneity. And if you're always trying so hard to control, it is harder for it to come in. She says joy comes from being present when the moment moves outside your control and it takes on a life of its own. The coffee Sudoku experience for me, hearing the sound of being pulled into the moment with the bus stop kids, illustrates it beautifully in my life. The kids are demonstrating this concept. They were running around for the last time before they have to get on that bus, and they have to sit on that seat, and they're not supposed to have their hands over here. So they intuitively know this is the running around time. They are completely in the moment, and they are being very spontaneous. So I love it when we can get our best inspired moments from kids and from dogs and from people being in love. Another facet of, I think, what Hamilton is talking about is, and I know we've been talking about this all month, about His Holiness the Dalai Lama being an example of this, and about that joy and joking and laughing he does, even though he has been through such horrendous circumstances in his personal life, and he continues to watch the suffering in Tibet and the persecution of Buddhists. But what he has is a lifetime of practicing being fully present in the moment. Because he has done that practice about impermanence. Everything will change or go away. So you can only truly be in the moment you are having. That practice of being in the moment, always embracing the parts of the world that he's experiencing right then. And that allows him to let in joy at any moment. So think about that juxtaposition of Reverend Hamilton's two conditions of joy, being present in the moment and noticing that unpredictable spark coming your way. I fly out here from Western Washington, and I hate going through the SeaTac airport. It is the only part of the whole gig that I don't like, is just right there in the SeaTac airport, which is not that long. It's not that long that I'm dealing with the airport. And this last trip, there was a couple there with their 3 cats. Each cat has to have its own carrier. Each cat looked very different. And they were explaining to me that they had to put their cats on leashes and walk them through security one by one. And every person sitting around hearing this story burst out in laughter. And they explained another time, because this was the second leg of a move for them, and another time they had to hold each cat separately as they walked through. And I was thinking, I would have helped you. And I thought, no, that would have been a terrible idea because I would have been scratched from. But anyway, we all laughed and we all enjoyed this moment. It was spontaneous. We all hate being in the airport, but it came our way. There's also a unique opportunity for joy coming towards some of you in the congregation. And I'm primarily speaking of those who might be newer, or you might come back after a while. And there are some of you who just kind of haven't gotten around to this yet. And the opportunity for joy that's coming your way is an invitation to become a member here at UUFB. When I decided to become a member of a fellowship about 28 years ago, I was filled with joy. Because, and I had been attending about a year, I think, but for me, becoming a member was so much more than being able to fill certain roles in the church, like to serve on the board, you have to be a member, or to vote at semi-annual meetings, which was important, but that wasn't what drove it for me. For me, it meant I was making a choice to belong to a community that celebrates everyone's worth, your inherent worth. A community that placed love at the center of its actions. So when I signed that book, I belonged, and I was joyful. And it had been a couple of years since I had felt like I really belonged anywhere because I had moved to a new location. So my signing, my doing the membership, I was feeling that I belong to this community and I have made it visible with my signature. What I also realized was by becoming a member, a little piece of that community belonged to me. I got to just stick it in my back pocket. Got to carry a little piece of that around in my heart and in my pocket, so that I could just pull that out whenever I needed to. Those values, that love, that it belonged to me. I was walking around embodying it. So if you aren't a member of UUFB and you want a little more joy in your life, come, there's going to be a May 4th newcomer breakfast over here, and you can get your questions answered about membership. And are there membership committee Tanya's in the back, Carolyn, yes, and Jeannie. So you can ask them questions today if you don't want to wait till May 4th. Now, I promised you I was also going to talk about joy as resistance, and I think I should shift. So during the month of March, I was busy writing 3 sermons that were going to be delivered late March to early April. So there was Trans Visibility Day, there was the subject of trust, and there was the subject of joy. Because trust and joy were both fed to us by Soul Matters as being our monthly themes. And as hard as I tried to keep those in 3 distinct categories, it was impossible. They just wound themselves around each other and would not let go. Because when you're in pain, trusting that joy is possible is what eventually allows joy to come in. You just have to make space for the possibility. And writer and activist Maria Popova tells us, in this world heavy with robust reasons for despair, joy is a stubborn courage we must not surrender, a fulcrum of our personal power we must not yield to cynicism, blame, or any other costume of helplessness. And when the war within us rages, as it does in every life, the practice of joy, the practice of courage, the courage of joy becomes our mightiest frontier of existence. That was like a holy guacamole Batman moment for me when I came across that sentence. And I can't remember if avocados are on the tariff list or not this week, so I'm just gonna. The courage of joy becomes the mightiest frontier of our existence. That is so immense, I can't even integrate it fully into my thinking. And I'm just going to play with it for the whole month or the whole year. The word and concept of mightiness is strong, it's enormous, it carries some real punch in our lives. And the courage of joy outpaces and outshines everything else. And it's a frontier which is ripe for exploration and very good stewardship. Activists and oppressed people have long known that they cannot do their work without joy. And Lisa was talking about this little light of mine being part of that. And you can't help but be happy when you're singing that song, being joyful. Joy keeps spirits up and strong. It keeps people writing blogs, showing up at marches, giving testimony at the legislature, writing letters from the Birmingham jail. It also keeps us talking with our neighbors even when we don't agree with them. And notice I'm saying, talk to your neighbor, don't argue with them, because facts don't change people's minds, but relationships do. It is wired into our humanness that we have this capacity for joy even when times are very hard. And that to be joyful in the face of chaos, hatefulness, oppression, that is resistance. It means we are deserving. Our inherent worth allows us to be joyful. I'm going to wrap up with the author Ross Gay, who writes entire books about joy, and I think we have one of them in our lending library. And Ross Gay says, what if joy and pain are fundamentally tangled up with one another? Or even more to the point, what if joy is not only entangled with pain, suffering, or sorrow, but what if it emerges from how we care for each other through those things? What if joy, instead of refuge or relief from heartbreak, effloresces comes up as we help one another carry our heartbreaks? So I am joyful we gathered this morning. And I hope you find one takeaway in the sermon today that you can go out and start allowing more possibility of joy in your life. That you find a moment in every day. And if you need some places to start, we've got crocuses blooming, we have irises blooming. There is a dog park over here. Go see the dogs and the kids. And we also have a bowling event coming up on April 27th at MSU. So there's some information over there. So you can certainly catch some joy at our community bowling event. So take that with you. And I will take that with me. I feel joyfulness all the time when I think about this congregation, even when I'm not here. Amen.